Welcome into Eye on Northeast Kansas, the podcast. This is where we recap some of the week's top interviews that you see on our Eye on Northeast Kansas TV show. I'm your host, Melissa Bruner. Our show airs live Monday through Friday, 4 o'clock Central Time from our WIBW TV studios in Topeka. We are starting to feel a lot more like spring weather-wise around Northeast Kansas, and some of our guests this week address some of those topics we typically see around the spring season. But a big discussion around the capital city for at least a couple weeks now has dealt with the issue of people who are chronically unsheltered and who may also be suffering from mental illness. District 2 Topeka City Councilwoman Christina Valdivia Alcala has been raising these concerns for several weeks now during the Topeka City Council meetings. She has been urging city leaders to take action. She said people in her district, particularly the Oakland neighborhood, have started to feel unsafe because of the actions of a couple of chronically unsheltered people. She said they're doing things like going through trash, perhaps creating disturbances, maybe knocking on people's doors. She is urging people to take action. She even called a community meeting about the topic. One of the people she has called out is Shawnee County District Attorney Mike Kagay. She is wondering if perhaps the district attorney's office should be doing more to have these people perhaps involuntarily committed for mental health treatment. District Attorney Kagay visited Eye on Northeast Kansas this week. He talked about that involuntary commitment process. However, this was also the same day as that tragic shooting at a school in Nashville. And as we were coming on the air with our show live, we were standing by to learn an update from Nashville police. So before we asked him about those issues surrounding people who are mentally ill and are chronically unsheltered and perhaps may need some services, we also asked him to reflect on the issue of violence among young people and these school shootings. Where are your thoughts? What discussions have been happening in terms of school safety in our area? This is certainly a reminder that no matter the size, how large or how small a school, this can happen. So what does it remind us we need to be doing here?
Well, I think first and foremost, as a parent, this is every parent's worst nightmare. You send off your kids to school, you expect them to be safe and to have a good experience during the day. You never want to consider the possibility that they could be facing something that nobody's really accounting for. And so that's my first thought. Beyond that, the schools all have a responsibility to make sure that the kids are safe at all times. And so whether that's having a school resource officer in the building, which most of them do, or whether it's having private security or someone who's designated to do things, making sure protocols are clear and that there's a plan in place. It's incumbent in today's world for us all to be vigilant and take those necessary steps and be prepared.
Is that if you see something or hear something, to say something? And how seriously do we take every single threat that comes along?
I think you take it absolutely seriously. I think any threat that comes along, whether it's an offhand comment, whether it's an actual threat, whether someone says, I just thought about doing this, I think we have a responsibility to act. Because if we did that, and we did that every time, I think we would see fewer school shootings actually carried out. And we've seen that happen here in Topeka.
I was going to say, your office has investigated these sorts of things.
That's right. Not too long ago, we had an incident at a middle school where a young student was making a threat, was sharing some information with another student who was very alarmed, alerted her parents. They took the appropriate action. They notified law enforcement, they notified school administrators, and they intervened before a tragedy occurred.
And that is why you can then press charges, even with someone that young?
That's right.
This was an adult today, obviously, so it was a bit of a different situation, but no matter the age, there are some different statutes that you can help to address.
Absolutely. The person that I'm talking about is still in custody today.
There's a mental illness component that comes along with these discussions and some of these incidents. And again, we don't know what happened today, but this ties into the topic that I wanted to ask you about today. The city of Topeka has been having some discussions recently, studying ways to assist people who are homeless. And we had been reporting on a situation and some concerns that District 2 City Council Representative Christina Valdivia Alcala has raised, questions about some folks in the Oakland neighborhood in particular, people who are unsheltered, but who are also causing some safety concerns among residents there. And she wants to know what can be done. There are some questions about if people are mentally ill, raising these issues, what can we do about them? If not criminally, what can we do to get them mental health resources and assistance?
Yeah, absolutely, Melissa. So I want to emphasize something here. Having a mental illness is not a crime, right? Just because someone has a mental illness doesn't mean they need to be locked up and spirited away against their will. Everyone has rights in this country, and there are processes in place and laws to protect them, afford them due process, but also to deal with situations as they arise. Now, occasionally, somebody with a mental illness will commit a crime, and the law allows us to intervene at that point in time. Whether law enforcement has been contacted, they come, they do their investigation, they determine there is a crime, my office proceeds accordingly. There's another process that not a lot of people know about, and it's called an involuntary committal process. And this is actually under the Civil Code. And the way it works is, if someone does have a severe mental illness to the point where they cannot care for themselves, or they present a risk, a danger to themselves or another. A classic example would be somebody with paranoid schizophrenia running out into the middle of the road, trying to get hit by a car, or jumping on top of cars, something like that. You can't have that happen. You can't allow that to happen. So the citizens need to contact law enforcement, the CIT unit. They need to contact Vallejo, who is our community health care provider, because under state law, Vallejo has to screen that person as having that mental illness before they can be admitted into the state hospital for treatment. So if those criteria are met, they've been screened, we can initiate a petition through my office, and we go before a judge, and the judge makes that determination whether or not this person meets the statutory criteria and can be committed against their will for treatment.
How difficult is that, and how often do we use that? Because it would seem that someone perhaps maybe running at you on the sidewalk or something of that nature would make you feel understandably concerned.
Absolutely. It's something we do pretty frequently. We file several hundred of those each year, and that's been consistent during my time in the office. But I want to emphasize something. It's kind of like putting a Band-Aid on a problem when you really should be going to the ER, okay? Best case scenario, the person does get committed and they get treatment and they get stabilized, and that process might take a few weeks. On the outside, it might take a few months, and then the treatment provider makes the determination to release them, and the cycle starts again. So this is not a criminal justice issue that's going to solve mental illness, right? It's a community issue, and we need to pool resources, and we need to work collectively with all the stakeholders to identify the appropriate response and make sure that the support is there. I know there's a willingness to have those conversations, and they've been ongoing for the past several months, and I've been a part of many of them.
Those conversations will continue next week as well. Christina, Valdivia, Alcala's community meeting in the Oakland neighborhood, by the way, had more than 100 people attend. There were representatives of Vallejo Behavioral Health, the Topeka Rescue Mission, the Topeka Police Department, all on hand. Topeka City Manager Steve Wade has called a homelessness summit. That is taking place Wednesday, April 5th, and more than 30 community organizations are invited to take part in that. So we'll be continuing to follow that issue. Councilwoman Christina Valdivia Alcala also is involved with District 1 Representative Karen Hiller on a project that is returning for a second year in the capital city. This has stemmed from a priority some of our city leaders have to improve the appearance of the capital city and the appearance of our neighborhoods. Last summer, Karen Hiller and Christina Valdivia Alcala were among those who came up with what they called changing our culture of property maintenance. What they want to do is help folks, encourage neighbors to help each other before there are code compliance issues and code compliance has to get involved. It really is a grassroots effort to help folks who may need help with mowing their lawns or cleaning up their yards. They visited to tell us a little bit more about year 2 of this effort, how it works, and how people can learn more. And first of all, congratulations that the program's coming back for a second year. For those who aren't familiar, Karen, with it, what is the concept?
The concept is to get everyone to be mowing their own yard, and if they're not able for some reason or another, for neighbors and groups to figure out how to help them so that this whole city looks good all the time and that we're taking care of ourselves and each other.
How popular was it in the first year in terms of not just people who wanted the services, but also in terms of the volunteers and things that were involved?
We had a core couple of volunteer groups. We know that we recorded over 200 mows that would not have occurred otherwise. And a lot of times people came out. There were times when the volunteers were going to show up and the yard was already mowed or picked up, and people came out and volunteered with them. So this summer, we want to beat that and do as much as we can to get people to report what they've done for themselves and each other so that we can celebrate along the way and at the end of the season.
Christina, why is a program like this important? I guess what was the gap that you were finding as folks were reporting what they felt were nuisance properties or code violations, and the code people go out and they have a conversation? What was the gap that was discovered?
Well, I think the gap that we're finding is really first and foremost, how do we bring communities together to where we don't have to get to that point? Is there an elder in the neighborhood that a church can perhaps help and help mow? Is there a young mother with children that doesn't have a lawnmower, and how can the NIA possibly help her? So our goal is, before code enforcement even has to get involved, how do we learn to reconnect as neighborhoods? And so that's what these community meetings that are going to be coming up. There is going to be 3 of them, one on March 30th tomorrow, and that's at 5:30 at the Central Park Community Center on 1534 Southwest Street. April 3rd, we're having an 11 a.m. one for folks that may do better in the morning, and that's going to be at Hillcrest Community Center, 1800 Southeast 21st, and then a Spanish-speaking meeting where our DEI officer is going to be present, and that will be on April 10th at 5:30 p.m. at the Salvation Army. But again, it's how do we build community and helping each other.
Who all mobilized to join in on this last summer?
Well, what we're looking for, what happened last summer and what we're looking for this summer in greater numbers is individuals, people that individually want to do their own or want to help a neighbor or somebody else, groups. That could be a church group, a work group, any kind of a civic organization group, anybody that wants to help as a group, neighbors. So pull together your block, your whole neighborhood, whatever you want to do, and businesses as well. They're already typically mowing the around their own business. This is an opportunity to pick up another couple mows with their guys, or to send their crews out, or even for anybody to donate some money that would pay for a mow for somebody else.
And at what point will people be able to sign up if they need the service? Is that still closer to the summer?
We are ready to start signing up. I think it's right now.
And so for the sessions that you mentioned, should that be for people interested in volunteering or people who would perhaps need the service, or both?
Both. I would say both, because what we're trying to do as well is reconnect with those. When we first started with this idea and concept, a whole bunch of community folks came to our meetings and really liked the vision that we were talking about. We want to encourage those folks to come, the ones that need help to come as well, the organizations to come, everybody to come together for these 3 meetings so we can give the information. So if you want to visit the city's website, it's www.topeka.org, and search Changing Our Culture.
Right, and I think that's right under For Residents. I'll put the direct link on WIBW.com so people can get to that. There's also a phone number if you don't have internet access, 785-368-9530. And they plan to give away a free lawnmower at each of those meetings, along with some other prizes as well. So the first information session is down. There are 2 more to go. All that information is on WIBW.com. Also, Topeka.org under For Residents, Changing Our Culture of Property Maintenance. That is also where you would sign up if you'd like to volunteer, as well as if you would like to utilize the services of those volunteers. Neighbors helping neighbors. Also showing up in our yards this time of year, all those critters, those babies that are around the area. So several years ago, we have discovered around our yard maybe some baby bunnies that it looked like maybe needed a little help. Actually, we found them when we were crossing the street, and all of a sudden I looked down, and in the right of way there was this nest kind of tucked under the grass, and there were some baby bunnies in there. I didn't know what to do. I ended up finding Dennis Dinwiddie, who works at the Topeka Zoo. He also works with the Northeast Kansas Wildlife Rescue Group. This is their specialty, folks. They know what to do with the baby bunnies, the baby birds, the fawns that are hanging out. They also know about snakes, all the sorts of things that you might need to know about wildlife. They can help you out. So I asked Dennis, especially as this is the time of year, it's starting up again, I asked him to pay a visit and kind of fill us in on the do's and don'ts of all the creatures that are around our yards right now. And Dennis, you always are full of information, and yes, I have called you several times over the years about things in my yard. But first, you brought something with you that it's interesting that you brought this with you, because no lie, I had a question on my Facebook page just a couple days ago asking if the snakes were out yet, and I heard a story about this particular snake. Somebody had a snake in their house and said they swore it was a rattlesnake, but it was one of these. So what did you bring with you?
We brought a speckled king snake with us, because since we're going to be talking about how to react to all that wildlife you're about to start seeing as we get more and more of it coming out of hibernation, coming out of torpor, and coming around our homes and our neighborhoods. One of the things that we need to be aware of is that our Kansas reptiles, such as snakes, turtles, tortoises, they're waking up and coming out of hibernation at about the same time that our lawnmowers and our weed whackers come out of hibernation. So we want to use a great deal of caution during those first mowing or two that we have in the yard, around the yard, that we're not finding some of those reptiles that are out and newly looking for food to fatten up on in the spring after a long winter for them. So that's why we brought this one, was just to highlight the fact that they're coming out of hibernation at the same time that our lawnmowers are. So be careful when you do that first mowing this year.
Absolutely. Now, I know you wouldn't have handed it to me if it was going to hurt me, because that's a lot of the reaction people have when they see a snake. Is it going to hurt me? How do you know that this is a nice snake that is going to actually help your yard and keep the pests and rodents at bay?
Well, you know, the number of venomous snakes we have in Kansas is really quite low. People hear stories about them being poisonous when in most cases they're not. And even if they are, which is very rare in our area, they are still going to be far more frightened of a human than a human could ever be of them. Have to remember that no matter how long a snake is, it's only an inch or two high off the ground. So it spends its whole life looking at the world from only a couple inches high. When it sees a human 60, 65, 70 times taller than it is, it will be far more frightened of us. If you just leave it alone and walk away from it, it's going to disappear on its own.
So be cautious of the snakes that might be under your mowers and such. What about when we see, first of all, birds? A lot of times we see birds hopping around the yard. We get a little nervous. What should we do with them?
Right. The ones that are hopping around the yard are not actually babies. Those are fledglings. Those are birds that are old enough. They've been kicked out of the nest by mom and dad on purpose to get them on the ground, because mom and dad need them on the ground for a few days to teach them how to fly. During that time, they're pushing them along so that eventually one of those little pushes is going to turn into a short flight, and the fledgling starts figuring out, I can do this and I can fly with mom and dad, and then I can move with them and they can teach me how to be a wild bird. But during the time that they are on the ground, mom and dad are still feeding them, protecting them from predators as best they can. So we need to leave them alone and allow mom to finish raising them, because in the wild kingdom, just as in our own, mom can raise that baby better than some other species can. So leave that bird alone.
Should we worry about those that are in a nest? Even though we swear the mama bird hasn't been back, chances are, what, she probably has?
The chances are that she has, and that she's being cautious. When she comes back to the nest, she will generally be as cautious as she can, not to do so with a great deal of fanfare, because she does not want to highlight the location of the nest for predators who are specifically looking for birds to eat.
Bunnies, when should we worry?
Bunnies, if they are still, eyes closed. When they're very small and very young, they are still out on their own in most cases, because once the bunny is fully furred, has fur all over its body, and its eyes are open, the only two things it's going to do for the rest of its life is eat grass and hide. Now, when they're very, very young, they're still not doing that hiding part very well yet. So remember, though, that they are already out on their own. They're weaned. They're no longer dependent on mom. Fully furred, eyes open, out running around the yard. They're already on their own. So let them continue eating grass and learning how to hide, and leave them alone, because once again, they can take care of themselves, and nature can take care of them better than humans can.
If their eyes are closed, what should we do?
If their eyes are closed, let's say, for example, you find one that's been taken out of the nest. If you know where the nest is, put it back in the nest. And if it's, for example, your dogs who found the nest and started raking through there, you could do something like put bricks, rocks, something small like that around the outside corners of that, and then put something flat like a piece of wood over it, so that mom can get into that nest to nurse them, but the dogs can't get into that nest. And so mom needs access, but she's going to come back to the nest after dark and before sunup. She will do her things that she has to do during the hours of darkness, so that she does not highlight the location of the nest to predators. So that you don't see mom does not mean that mom's not there.
And are other mammals, do they follow similar rules in terms of when to leave alone and when to?
They do. For example, if you see young, small raccoon or more than one roaming around, they're probably just out exploring while mom's off getting some food, but mom's going to be back. She's going to find them. If you find a fawn, If you find a baby deer, for example, mom will typically stash that fawn before sunrise in a place that's nice and quiet and peaceful, and she's going to ask that fawn to stay there for the remainder of the day. She'll come back and check on it only a few times in order not to highlight the location of it for predators, a common theme here. Then when it becomes dark, she's going to move it along again. So when you see the fawn, the fact that mom is not there with it is because that's exactly what mom's supposed to be doing, not being there highlighting the location of this fawn.
Well, if you have any questions or you encounter an animal and you want to know what to do, contact the Northeast Kansas Wildlife Rescue Group first. Before you do anything, 785-575-1991 is their number. I will put that on WIBW.com. Dennis, thank you.
May we take just 10 seconds? Want to throw out a thank you also for Evergy. They are the sponsor for the Emergency Animal Rescue Hotline. That the number's on your screen. They've been sponsoring that Emergency Animal Rescue Hotline for over 20 years now.
Like I said, I have used it several times. Dennis always has great information, by the way. Yes, I was holding the snake throughout that episode, and it was crawling up my arm, and you can see that video on WIBW.com. I have some pictures on my Facebook page, also WIBW Melissa Bruner. The final conversation I want to share with you was so fun. We had a group of 3 women firefighters. They represent Topeka Fire, Shawnee Heights Fire, and Soldier Township Fire. For several years now, the Topeka Fire Department has put on Camp Courage, and it encourages young ladies to explore what it might be like to be a firefighter. Some of the ladies who are in the fire service decided we really need a way to show girls that they can do this. So we had a great conversation, not just about the camp, but also why these ladies believe firefighting is their calling, what got them into the service, and why they love it so much. And Brendy Munninger with Topeka Fire, Sarah Thielenhouse with Shawnee Heights Fire, and also with Riley County EMS, and Rachel Free with Soldier Township are the all-star lineup here to tell us all about this. Thanks for coming, ladies. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So Camp Courage. Brendy, what is Camp Courage?
Basically, it's a camp geared at teenage girls, like you said, to get them inspired and to what we do. And they get to come hang out with us all week. They get to do rappelling, vehicle extrication. They can spray water. So it's something really cool that Topeka Fire puts on every June.
It is very hands-on. Sarah, what are some of those things that everybody gets to experience? But we have some video of some of them as well.
They get a whole week's worth, whether it's on the fire ground, doing vehicle extrication, to climbing out of a building.
It's unusual stuff, right?
Yeah.
Not something they do every day.
No, not at all.
What is the, Rachel, how long have you been involved in it?
So I've been with Camp Courage, this will be the 4th year now, right, Brendy?
Yes.
And I've been there every single year, and every year it just gets better and better and more smooth, and we just add cooler things every single year.
What was the idea behind it? Why did you all feel this was something important to start here?
Like I said earlier, I think when I was that age, I never got exposed to this kind of career path or anything like this as far as a camp. So I think it's just if anything, it's a really cool camp because it's nothing that you would normally do. So, and all the girls, they show up and they're a little timid at first, but by the end of the week, they're all having the time of their lives. So.
Right. Sarah, describe that transformation that you see.
It's pretty cool to watch because the girls come in and they think that they can't do. Like one of the things is climbing the aerial. They can't think they can climb that high, and they end up doing it. And most of them, I would say, want to go back and do it again. So.
Rachel, what is the most cool experience you think the girls get to do and the best reaction that you've seen?
A lot of the girls have the most fun rappelling. A lot of them are really, really scared to do it at first, but, it is called Camp Courage, step out of your comfort zone, show courage. And so a lot of the girls, when they finally overcome that fear, they're just so excited they want to do it again. It gets them hooked, realizing that, yes, they can do these things that they might be afraid of in the beginning.
This is wrapping up Women's History Month, and so congratulations to all of you because you are part of women's history in taking these steps that are a non-traditional field. Do you feel that at all? Do you feel like role models when you see these girls come in?
I guess the main thing with me is with the camp and just when I'm out in the community, it is kind of like, I know when I was growing up, I never saw a female firefighter. So if I could just get somebody to take a second look and be like, oh, there's a girl doing that. That's, I can do that too.
What inspired you to the career? If you never saw a female firefighter, what made you say, I can and will do this?
It was just on a whim. I just walked by a fire station one day. I was like, what do you have to do that? And I just kind of started researching, and I'm like, that sounds kind of awesome. And
here you are.
And here I am, and it is awesome.
What about you, Sarah? What inspired you to pursue this?
I actually started on the medical side in EMS, and just being around the providers and the firefighters, they kind of convinced me to join, and 10 years later, here I am.
Which is really cool. Were you the first? Were there other women in the department that you
On
first
my
joined?
department, I was the first one.
You were the first.
For a while.
But they encouraged you. Nobody said, you can't do it, Sarah.
No.
This is just for us guys. They said, come on, join us. Which I think is super cool to get that encouragement.
And they treat me like family. So.
Oh, that's very nice. And Rachel, how about you? What inspired you to this career?
I remember the firefighters coming to my school as far back as like kindergarten for Pub Ed for Fire Safety Week, and I just always thought it was the coolest. It was the most fun. So it always kind of sat in the back of my mind, and then when I finally got out of high school and was 18 and old enough to do it, I was like, let's see what this is all about.
And here you are now as well. For any of you, why do you feel it's important that women are represented on the fire service?
I think it just goes back to the you can do whatever you want kind of mentality. Like you can do anything you want. The job doesn't discriminate gender-wise, the job's the same for everybody. It's just if you want to do it or not. So
sign up for Camp Courage now, right? Sarah, how do people sign up?
They can go online.
I
don't know.
Yeah, you do.
Yes.
Yes, you
Brenda's
do.
sorry.
Brenda's the one who's gotten all this.
Yeah,
going.
you can go on Topeka Fire Department's website, and the opening for sign up starts April 1st, so in a couple
1st,
days
Saturday.
at 10 a.m. It is limited to 20 girls, and it does fill up fast. So
that's why it's important to get
Yeah.
on right away.
yep, and the camp's free, so that's kind of a cool perk for it too. So they get to come do fire department things just
Very
at no
good.
cost.
And the camp itself is June 5th to 9th. And if other women out there are saying, you know what, yeah, I think I can do that too, just contact your local fire department and you guys get them hooked up.
Yep.
All right. Ladies, thank you so very much. Appreciate you being here. And Camp Courage coming up this summer. Applications open Saturday, April 1st. That camp is so cool, and it is always fun to see them wrap up the week with that rappelling. You can watch the video of that segment, along with we have some video from last year's camp on WIBW.com. Also on my WIBW Facebook page, I put the links to not just the segments you just heard, but all the guests that you see on Eye on Northeast Kansas. Again, you can watch the show live streaming Monday through Friday, 4 o'clock Central Time on WIBW.com. We post all the segments on WIBW.com as well. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast this week. Remember to subscribe and tell your friends. We'll see you on the Red Couch.